Hello and welcome to the second episode of Incantation, a horror movie review podcast where we discuss both classic and current horror movies as well as everything in between, right? We're four friends from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia with a shared love for everything that's horror. My name is Joe and with me today is Caleb.
Hello.
Josh.
Hi.
Lynn.
Hi.
Right, so for those who are joining us this week, we are actually looking at possession-themed films. Each week, one of us will actually choose a movie based on that theme to review. And the first one that we talked about was the mother of all horror movies, The Exorcist. That was chosen by Josh. So this week is my turn, and we are actually going to take a look at The Taking of Deborah Logan. The Taking of Deborah Logan is a 2014 American found footage supernatural horror film. It's a directorial debut by Adam Robitel, stars Jill Larson, Anne Ramsay, and Michelle Ang. And it's a story about sort of like a documentary crew making a film about Alzheimer's, Alzheimer patient whose name is Deborah Logan, played by Jill Larson, who sort of like uncovers there is something more to Deborah's decline into Alzheimer's disease, and they're there to document the whole thing. And this whole thing is shot in like a sort of like a found footage horror movie format. So what I think about the movie is I actually watched this movie twice. So this is my second time watching it for the review. I watched it a few years ago actually. I remember watching it for the first time and I was thoroughly creeped out by Deborah Logan, the main sort of like the main protagonist antagonist character, and then and I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a really good found footage horror movie. There were some twists, not really twists. I think this departure from the norm, I suppose. And my take on the movie is the second time I watched it, it didn't actually really hold up that much. I mean, all the creep factors were kind of gone the second time I watched it. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know if it's just me the first time seeing it is different, but if you sort of like make a comparison to The Exorcist, it's the second time I watched The Exorcist, it was even more effective for me. So yeah, I would say it's a pretty good movie to watch for the first time, but second time viewing it didn't do it that much for me. Yeah. So what do you think, Lynn? What do you think?
I think I agree with you on probably not watching it the second time. It's my first time watching this movie. I personally didn't really like it. I think it's because I watched so-called one of the best horror movies ever, The Exorcist, last week. Yeah, I guess this movie, there were pretty decent themes in place, like the whole mother and daughter relationship, and Alzheimer's, talking about health deteriorating and stuff like that. The themes were quite mainstream. I would say a bit predictable for a horror movie. Overall, I think what's creepy about the movie is the essence of the occult, which we will talk a bit about it later. It was because it's a real thing, right? It's a Native American occult. So I think that was the part that freaked me out a bit. But overall, the wow factor, I would say it's just a so-so movie. Worth watching it for the first time, but probably not the second.
Right. Caleb, this is your first time watching it? No,
it's my second time.
Right, this is your second time as well, right?
But I completely forgot about it until I saw Deborah Logan, the character.
Okay.
Then I remembered, it's this show. I don't want to spoil it.
Spoil. You almost spoiled it.
It's this one.
Okay.
Right. So it's a found footage movie. It's as good as you can get. For me,
you love found footage horrors, right?
I love found footage horrors. I have like a soft spot for it, since like my favorite movie is like Paranormal Activity 1, the very first one. Right. So I think found footage horrors had like has like a only has like a effect on the initial viewing. For you might be the Blair Witch, right?
Yep.
And like the selling point is like
It could be real.
it could be real.
Right.
So after you've seen one found footage horror, there's like nowhere you can't go any better. You can't make like a better found footage horror, right? Yeah, that this movie is like I don't know. I've seen a lot of found footage horror, so it's alright.
It's alright.
Caleb rank
all
all
right.
the found footage horror.
But you like found footage horror.
I like found footage horror, but yeah, it's like it hit the point where they can't go any better.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah,
Right. I guess like the pinnacle of found footage horror would be Paranormal Activity for you.
for me, yeah.
Okay. So would you recommend this to horror fans?
I mean, yeah. If you have nothing to do and you just want to watch a movie, you can watch this. This is pretty decently made
Right.
found footage horror.
Okay. Josh, what about you?
Okay, so like you, Joe, I had actually seen the Taking of Deborah Logan when it first came out in 2014. So when we said we were going to review this for this week, I couldn't really remember much of the plot points, but I seem to recall that I had a good time watching it, right? So I was intrigued to see it again, to revisit this film. And so how did I find it this time around? I could mince my words here, but I'm not going to. The Taking of Deborah Logan is terrible. It's terrible.
Oh no. But you enjoyed it the first time.
Yeah. So maybe I've grown up in the 6 years. Well, my taste has changed in the 6 years from 2014 to the present time, right? I mean, we can dive into specifics when we go into spoiler talk, but generally speaking, I have two main issues with the film. My first issue is how it uses the found footage format, right? Like Caleb has said, when you've seen one found footage film, you probably have an idea how it's going to go. Now, some of them have done some pretty innovative things with it, but generally speaking, when you go into a found footage film, you have an idea what to expect, right? And Devin Farici on the website Birth Movies Dev actually lists a few recommended rules for found footage horror.
Okay.
I'm not going to go to all of them, but there are three of them that I think are pretty good. One of them, it says it has to be relatable, right? Film it in a space that the audience can recognize. So like Paranormal Activity, it's in a house. Blair Witch Project's in the woods, right? Another one is establish a reason to film, right? So there has to be a reason why the camera is on. And, once you draw the audience in, maybe past the halfway point, people won't really care so much why the camera is still running. I think a good example of this is probably Cloverfield, where the camera really has no reason to be on past the halfway mark, but it still is, right? And by the time, because it's really, really entertaining, you don't mind just going along for the ride. And another one that he lists is commit to the style, right? So if you're doing found footage, do found footage. Don't add in a cutaway or change to a straight narrative where you abandon the found footage format. I agree with these rules. I'm going to add another one. Please do not break immersion by adding in music effects for jump scares, right? So like Caleb mentioned, the reason why we love this found footage format is because it's a really cheap but effective way to get us immersed into the film, right? We want to believe there's this group of people that film this particular thing and something horrifying happens to them. So Deborah Logan positions itself as Mia's PhD thesis film project. Why on earth would a PhD thesis film project have music cues for jump scares? It just
She's
doesn't make
faking
any
it.
sense.
We're kind of getting into spoilers.
But my second and probably biggest issue with the film is how it treats Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease, to me, feels like it's really been treated as a plot device. So something to move the film from its first act to a second act, where it then turns into a bit of a mystery concerning Deborah's past, which I really couldn't care less about. So I mean, there are many great found footage horror films out there, right? So we've already mentioned a few: Paranormal Activity, Cloverfield, Blair Witch Project. Some of them maybe have flown under the radar a little bit, like Creep or VHS 2, especially Safe Haven from there. I really, really loved that. Unfortunately, The Taking of Deborah Logan is not one of these great found footage horror films.
All right, guys, there you have it. This is our non-spoiler overview. So when we come back later, we are going to talk a little bit more in depth about The Taking of Deborah Logan. Stay tuned.
The story of Alzheimer's is never about one person. My PhD I'm gonna start again.
You want to keep the house? You need to sacrifice.
You talk to me about sacrifice?
Hey, hi.
Ma! They want to make a movie about me.
Yes, we will live and document our subjects' physical and mental degradation over the course of 2 one-month periods.
We're gonna have fun, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm not interested in being exploited.
You really gave us all quite a fright with your late-night gardening.
This is not normal sleepwalking. You should come see this.
The notion of spiritual parasites does exist.
Okay. She's gonna die.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Taking of Deborah Logan episode of the Incantation podcast. This is the part where we talk a little bit more in depth about the movie. So, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen this movie yet and you don't want to spoil, you can pause this podcast now and go watch it and then come back, right? So, there's this, since we did Exorcist episode, last episode, right? So there is a Exorcist parallel here that I guess I'm seeing it. I don't know if the rest of you are seeing it, where you're watching a loved one get some sort of initially you thought it was some kind of a disease, but it's not. I don't know if Deborah Logan actually has Alzheimer's, or if it's just the demon that's taking over. It is said that the Desjardins, is it? It's not even a demon, it's like a person.
It's a ghost, I guess.
It's a ghost that sort of like made a ritual, right? And then he's a ghost now, I guess. So who is like a snake spirit. I don't know how he managed that. But yeah, so there's a parallel there where you don't know where this person is being slowly taken over, and then in this case it is the daughter that is actually seeing the mother deteriorate and then sort of like decline into what was initially thought as the Alzheimer's disease, right? So Caleb, what do you think of that whole aspect of the movie? Where is there a parallel to the Exorcist that you see?
I mean, yeah, there's like a few things that is like mirror image to the Exorcist. Like, yeah, the instead of the daughter getting sick and deteriorating is the mother, and then the other person, which is the daughter, seeing this thing happening to her loved one, and she can't do anything about it. Yeah, that's probably the only thing, or something I didn't catch. Oh, also there's like those hospital scenes.
Yeah,
where she's getting treated. We see some injecting in the spine, which is ow.
Right. Okay.
That's probably it. Like very surface level kind of
Right.
stuff.
I mean-
they didn't like really dive deep into it.
Yeah, I was talking about it last episode about how The Exorcist sort of like reminded me of my grandma's ordeal in the hospital. And me watching The Taking of Deborah Logan didn't do it. Didn't bring those feelings back. It's just it feels like the director is just trying to like gross me out a little bit. And
Right.
yeah, and then okay. So I mean, I guess there wasn't an emotional connection to it. So what do you think, Lynn?
Yeah, I guess I see the parallel between this and The Exorcist. The only difference is that I felt that this one, like the whole Alzheimer's, like what Josh said earlier during the so-called non-spoiler review, right? This felt very much like a plot device. Like they didn't emphasize. I mean, like if you want to talk about Alzheimer's, right? Like I think there should be more elements of Alzheimer's being related to it. Like for instance, the ending, right? I think it's too early to talk about it, but nothing. There was no relevance to Alzheimer's right after the whole supernatural aspect came into play, right? So I felt that this was a very weak plot device compared to The Exorcist, where what was her name again? Reagan. Yeah. I mean, she was diagnosed with some brain or neurotic problem, right? But that wasn't really the issue, and we can see that the doctors were really trying to do something in that show. Whereas this one, I felt like the doctors were pretty useless in this show.
Yeah, the doctors are pretty useless in The Exorcist as well. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
So did you think Deborah had Alzheimer's, or was it the demon ghosts?
I think she actually did. The beginning part of the show kind of suggests that she probably did. Yeah, because she initially didn't want to be part of this research, right? So I think she knew that. Yeah, I mean, she acknowledges that she has that, lah.
Okay, Josh.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we could just jump at that point on whether she actually has Alzheimer's or not, I think the film actually makes it pretty explicit that she does. And like that's the reason why it opens up the gateway for Desjardins to come back to haunt her, right, so to speak, because she's then when she becomes lucid, you know, she's trying to hang on to the scenes of her past, and she's trying to, you know, bury them, because this is something that has been what she did in the past is something that has been haunting her for a while, like how she, well, I guess since we're in spoilers we can talk about it, like how she actually kills Desjardins. And so like that's something that you know, when she becomes lucid and when she gains her memories back, and that's something that she's trying very hard to either protect or to try to just destroy once and for all, right? That's why she's digging in the garden and things like that. But I mean, to go back to what Caleb was saying, yeah, there were these parallels. And I guess all of us have said it. There are these parallels, but it's really very superficial, right? The parallels with The Exorcist. You know, for the first 30 minutes of the film, I was really there with it. Right? I was there. I was like, okay, you know, I this seems like a really interesting premise. I want to see how they explore Alzheimer's and how they bring in these supernatural elements. And then there's this one pivotal scene which Caleb has touched on, the one where they are withdrawing the fluid from Deborah's spine. Now, you can draw the parallels to the scene in The Exorcist, the angiography scene, right, we should talk about.
Right.
So it's a really painful, uncomfortable scene that we have to sit through. But in The Exorcist, it leads on to something, right? The mom, Reagan's mom, sees this happening to her and comes to a breaking point where she's like, I cannot take this anymore, that this is happening to my daughter. It doesn't seem that any of this treatment is having any effect, you know, and that's what ultimately pushes her to seek the help of the Catholic Church to exorcise Reagan. Whereas in this scene, in Deborah Logan, it just feels like it was just being uncomfortable for uncomfortable's sake, right? It's just there to gross the viewer out or to make us feel, to feel sorry for Deborah, but it doesn't really do anything with it. And in The Exorcist, once that scene, the angiography scene happens, the film after that just takes off, right? It goes into, it just escalates from there. For me, I felt in Deborah Logan, once this scene is done, everything just goes downhill. Now, I just want to touch very quickly on the Alzheimer's bit, right? See, from the start, Mia, who's the one in charge of it's a PhD project, and she describes the film project as not only being interested in how Alzheimer destroys the patient, but also wants to see its physiological influence on the primary caregiver, right? But this is never explored in the film. We don't see how Alzheimer has changed the mother-daughter relationship between Deborah and Sarah. We don't have any context for that. We don't really dive into how Deborah's suffering has really affected Sarah. The film doesn't seem to be interested at all in this aspect of Alzheimer's, even though it explicitly states it at the front, right? So there's no emotional heft to the film. There's nothing to anchor us, nothing to make us want to truly care for these two characters.
We know they really need money.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, right, there's only, like, for me personally, the only thing I cared about was I was just wishing that Deborah's suffering could be eased somehow, because she really goes through a lot in this film.
Right.
But apart from that, the way that it uses Alzheimer's is just really, really disappointing.
So, let's talk a little bit about the whole lore of this Monacan ritual. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys like those things. I mean, like Lynn actually sort of like said it. She likes that, but it's creepy, and then it's actually a real thing. I don't know. What do you guys think of the whole Monacan ritual, Josh?
Man, I honestly couldn't care less.
Right. But I mean, watching me for the horror.
No, I mean the look. So there's this thing about when you're watching a film, how, if you're going to review it, you really shouldn't be imposing what you want on the film. You should take the film as it is. But I really couldn't help but feeling, why are we going into this occult murder mystery thing when what I really want to see is Deborah and Sarah's relationship, right? Like, So when it came to the whole thing about the Jardins, the Monacan ritual, what he wants to achieve, how he had killed 4 girls in the past, man, at that part of the film, I was just checking out, man. If we didn't have to do this review, a little bit after that, I would have just turned it off already, because I was like, this is I was like, I'm not here for this. I'm genuinely not here for this.
Okay.
Like, for me, the scary part is like the beginning of the show before the supernatural stuff.
Okay, so the supernatural stuff actually didn't do it any favors then.
It probably made it bad. Right? They could maybe suggest supernatural stuff but not actually have it.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
For me, it's scarier to see someone close deteriorate and the caregiver can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
So
that's the true horror, right? That's real horror right there.
It's realistic.
Yeah, but then it wouldn't be like a supernatural horror movie,
Right.
which is what the director sets out to do.
But when the supernatural stuff came in, it just, I don't know, it just kind of doesn't connect.
I would say the supernatural stuff wasn't strong enough. It wasn't strong enough. Like, there weren't really a lot of rules to it. Like, so she just sort of like teleported from the bottom of the floor up to the cabinet.
Right.
What does that mean? Like, Fine. Okay. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything.
Feels like they just want to make scary scenes.
It's not even scary. The cabinet scene wasn't scary.
Like spooky scenes.
Right. That was just kind of wacky. And then, but like there were a few scenes which I thought was pretty scary.
When she opened the window
Uh,
without touching it.
when she opened the window without touching it, and then there was a shot where this guy was like sort of like secretly filming her in the garden, and then someone called him, and then he panned the camera around,
Right.
and he panned back, and then Deborah was just right there.
She
and
just
then sort of
teleports.
like teleports. So it just seems to suggest like this thing has teleportation powers, which is weird.
Imagine her running really fast.
So I felt that the supernatural elements wasn't strong enough. That means they didn't lay much groundwork for it.
Right.
Like if you want to talk about maybe The Conjuring, they had more grounded, sort of tried to ground it to reality, kind of supernatural things happening, or maybe even The Exorcist. You sort of know what the demon can do and what the demon cannot do, and then but there seems to be no rules for this supernatural entity, and that's kind of, I guess, weak writing. I'm not sure. They didn't set down any rules for it. They didn't tell us specifically what this thing can do and cannot do to you. If it can do anything, like the nun, which can sort of like
Then what's the point?
sort of like distort reality, and she seems to have like Thanos powers,
And she still loses.
and she still loses to a couple of nuns. Right. So that's sort of like oh, I have this like really strong supernatural entity, and then it's supposed to be terrifying, but in a movie setting it didn't. It just makes it wacky and cartoonish, and it's just yeah. So
No, I think I mean, if for me, the problem wasn't that it didn't have rules. I think the problem is that it wasn't focused. Like the scares are not focused, right? Because, and again, it's you really shouldn't be comparing these to The Exorcist, because a lot of films are going to look very poor when you put it side by side with The Exorcist. But when you think about The Exorcist, right, you think about the scares that go into the film, or the things that Reagan does, and all of them serves a purpose, right? It is either to dive into Father Karras's his doubts or his guilt, or to amplify the fears of her mom. In this one, what is it doing? And the thing is that you can see that there are some parts of it, some of the scary bits are linked to what the film is trying to do. Every time that Deborah is in the backyard, or the time when she vomits out the worms, I thought that was pretty effective. That was a pretty good scene. But then there are other times where it just doesn't have any connection at all with what is going on. It's just there, jump scares for jump scares' sake.
Right.
And that is indicative of weak writing, or rather not having the imagination to try to link it into the lore that you're trying to present, right, with Desjardins and his occult and all of that.
Right. That's why I say it should have been linked a little bit more to the occult, like, they were actually doing sort of like maybe a snake ritual, which sort of like gives it snake powers. I mean, at the end,
I think there's not enough leverage.
They should like
Not
start.
enough leverage on the occult.
They should have start building about the occult in the beginning instead of almost to the end.
They didn't. They sort of like they shoved this switchboard operator thing,
Right.
and then that's how she got in touch with Desjardins, and yeah. So that's why I said like it was kind of weak, linked to the occult. Lin, you were saying.
Yeah. No, I was saying there was not enough leverage between the lore and what happens after that. Like, I thought, with that whole introduction of Desjardins, I thought like things would be better, because like I mean the first 30 minutes was okay, and then there was I felt that the whole occult was introduced very like vaguely, and like what you said, Joe, it was very weak, that there was no connections between like the occult. Like like what does it do, right? Like what does it do to Deborah and what powers does she have? And we can see at the end, that little girl, Deborah kind of like swallowed her head, not really swallowed, but
Trying
yeah,
to beat
that
her.
scene.
Trying to anaconda her.
Yeah, like what does that mean? Because the first 4 girls were marked something on their heads, right? And this one just didn't make sense at the end. Yeah, so it's just very weak.
Wasn't there something
I
about...
mean, they had a...
What?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Wasn't there something about the some sort of like cannibalistic ritual on the 4 girls? Or did you guys not catch that?
I think they didn't say there was a sacrifice or... I mean, the girls died, but the bodies were found. So I don't think there were any cannibalistic aspects in that ritual though.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it was very weak. It was like a passing point, right? I mean, there was nothing much explained about it.
Okay. Maybe we talk a little bit about some of the more redeeming factors of the film. Right. So I felt that there were some scenes that were quite effective. Like the first time I saw the woman, the Deborah trying to swallow that kid whole, I was like, whoa, what is that? So that kind of stuck with me for a while the first time I saw it. So that scene for me was pretty effective. I liked the fact that there was a smart decision being made by one of the characters where he just sees all these occultic things, supernatural things. He just bugs off. He says, "You guys can just stay here and continue to film, and then I'm gonna go." So that really, I like that. I mean, I not a lot of horror movie does smart characters.
There was Lights Out.
What?
Lights Out.
Lights Out?
The characters
Oh,
did
yeah,
a
that was
lot
great.
of smart decisions.
Right. The camera guy didn't really do a lot of smart decisions. He's just being told what to do.
He just said to hold the camera.
Right. And then he, like, the people asked the what was her name? Sarah? No, not Sarah. The Asian lady. Mia? Right. She's just like, you go up to the attic first, and then he just like, what people? He just goes up anyway.
Afraid of the white people.
Right. So I mean, I found the film sometimes like I don't know if it's intentional, but it's kind of funny at times. But
when you say there's like 3 addicts.
Yeah, there's freaking 3 addicts in the house.
How many addicts do you have?
I found that to be quite entertaining. What about you, George? Nothing entertaining about at all?
None.
Man, I'm really gonna have to dig deep here. Now, I will say like the first half an hour of the film, I guess were pretty good. The way that they were setting it up, and like you mentioned, right? I think the one memorable scene is where Deborah is trying to swallow Kara's head like a snake. That is, I had forgotten about that scene. I don't think I'm going to forget about it anytime soon. Because that really came out of nowhere, and that one was really pretty creepy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, really up to that point, I just. But we are trying to stay positive, so yeah. So that one was good, and
I thought Deborah's performance was really good.
Yeah. She
held the. Yeah. She held the movie together.
Yeah, Jill Larson's performance is she was really really committed to that performance.
Wondering if she starved herself.
Yeah, and the deterioration that happens to her, once when she presents with Alzheimer's at the start, you can see she's frail, but there's still some life there, and then when they go into the hair loss and her skin becomes a little bit translucent and the scales on her body, those were pretty creepy as well. So I'm not saying that the film is not scary or it's not creepy. There were some pretty decent moments where the hairs on the back of your hand might stand up a little bit, but yeah, overall,
Lynn?
I agree with Josh on the whole deteriorating aspect of Deborah. Especially when she pulled her own flesh, right? That was creepy as... yeah, that was quite disturbing. Yeah, and I kind of like the wacky aspect of like Louis, I think the cameraman. He's quite funny. And I find that swallowing scene, it was quite entertaining.
Entertaining? Explain.
It's quite funny for me when the mouth was just wide open looking at the camera, right? And also, there are certain things that just didn't make sense, such as like filming in that whatever underground room in the dark. That was just quite weird. But it was quite entertaining, yeah.
Caleb, any memorable scenes or scares for you?
Right. Like in the beginning at the non-spoiler part, I almost spoiled when I said, "Oh, Deborah Logan is this." The scene that made me remember was the snake swallowing scene.
That was pretty late into the movie.
I thought you were going to say the naked grandma when she's...
No!
I don't know if this was the movie that started that trope, but if it is, this movie deserves to be like minus another like.
I don't
3 or 4
even remember
points.
there's a naked grandma scene until you said it just now. I'm like, where? No.
There was. She was like stripping naked and then teleporting into rooms.
All right.
Yeah.
Why'd you remind me that?
I guess it was just attempting to make you guys feel creepy.
Right.
I mean, we were creeped out by.
Yeah, that was the scene when I was like, oh yeah, I remember seeing this before.
That's your scene. Right. The scene where she turned into a snake, which makes no sense. Because nowhere in the movie says that she's going to get snake powers.
Well, it's foreshadowed.
Right. So, another scene that kind of got me is really in the beginning when the camera guy was fixing a camera on the ladder,
right,
step ladder, and then she's just standing there looking.
And
I just kind of imagine myself standing up, working on something on the ladder, and then if my mom's just standing there looking, not saying anything, that would be pretty creepy.
And you were on top of the stairs.
Yeah.
On top of a stairs, on top of another stairs.
Right.
Right. I was half expecting her to push him
If
down.
I just turn around, my mom's just staring at me. I'm like, what the heck? Right, that's pretty creepy for me.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little about the ending. Right. The ending
Just a snake.
where Mia and Sarah, right, sort of like chases her. The geography of it is a bit blurred.
Right.
They go from one place to another place, sort of like they were being teleported around. I was kind of disoriented. They were at a house, and then it was like an abandoned house.
Cave.
From the house, they sort of like went into like a cave. I don't know how they got into the caves. But yeah, so it ends up in,
It's a mine, I think. I think that's what it is. So the entrance to the mine, and they went to the mine. If I'm not mistaken, that's what happens.
They went into the mine. So like I don't know. It like Deborah was like sort of like taking Kara, the little cancer girl, into the mines to cannibalize her.
Feels like the director is rushing to end the show.
He doesn't know what to do anymore.
Yeah. Right. So they just like go, and then they burn the body. Somehow it works.
It didn't work the first time.
But it didn't work when they were at home. Like, how does that work?
I guess the location of it matters. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah,
Right.
the whole thing was so
I guess-
disorienting that even the sheriff dying in the mines, it was
She
just
died? Oh yeah.
it just happened so fast that there's really no impact to that. I didn't realize that, or it didn't really make any impact on me until I read the synopsis of the film, and I was like, oh yeah, that sheriff actually died.
The sheriff was actually supposed to be some sort of like a girlfriend to Sarah.
Right. They try to build that character.
Right. But she just died.
She
and
just
then
did.
Sarah sort of like didn't care.
Right. She just continued trying to stab her mother with a syringe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's
With no lights on.
another thing about the writing, right? It was because Sarah mentions that, oh, I was kissing this girl when I was young, and then my mom saw that and she was so disappointed or so angry. And that girl is not the sheriff. Like, and I was thinking,
It's not?
no, it's not. And because the names
Okay.
are completely different, right? And so I was like, this is one of the easiest connections to draw, right? These are some of the things that, rewards people that pay us attention, right? So like, oh, she mentions it in one scene, and then at the end when she says the sheriff's name, and then you're like, oh, that's the girl that she was talking about previously, and that would explain why there seems to be some form of familiarity or intimacy between the two of them when they're speaking to each other.
Mhm.
But that doesn't happen, and it's just really, really weird. Like that would have been the easiest connection to draw. Why didn't they do that?
Right. Talk about the ending, Josh.
Oh, you
You
mean,
didn't care.
are we talking about where Kara, whether
Yeah.
Desjardins has actually possessed Kara or not at the end?
You didn't care, right?
I didn't care. I'm glad she doesn't have cancer anymore, but I honestly, if this is setting up like Taking of Deborah Logan 2 or Taking of Kara or I no I don't think there doesn't need to be a Taking Off franchise.
Lynn, take it.
The ending just didn't work for me as well. The occult said that 5 girls need to die, right? For this whoever Desjardins to be immortal.
Right.
Kara didn't die, so I really don't know if he possessed her or what. Cause they didn't leverage on the occult again. Like they didn't leverage on it well enough. So the ending is left for us to interpret on our own, and it just didn't work for me lah.
Right.
Because it's so vague. Like, is he in her? I don't know.
Or
Like,
maybe she's just creepy,
if
right?
it-
Maybe
if he does-
Kara is just creepy by nature, and she just like to smile into cameras.
yeah, I think I'll accept that as the conclusion of the show lah.
What's really dumb is Desjardins chose to live as a small girl.
What?
For the rest of his life now. He has to.
It's a pedo.
He has to live as a girl for the rest of his life now.
I mean, I guess that's one of the side effects of immortality. You become a small
You
girl.
can't choose who you're
Right.
You can't choose your host.
He's like, I didn't expect this.
But you don't know, right? So maybe Desjardins is just one incarnation of, someone
Right.
who has been. Look, we don't have to dissect this.
He's some sort of a French dude. He's the Avatar.
All right, let's just move this along. Lynn, maybe you could give us your ratings and recommendation.
I would rate it. Okay, so I don't like this movie. I'll never watch it again ever. So I would rate it probably a 4. I mean, it's not that horrible like some other movies that we've watched. It's not as bad as like Z or whatnot. But
Wretched.
yeah, I mean it has some decent elements in it, like the occult. I mean that they didn't leverage on it, but I like the fact that they brought that in. I guess that's the only positive I have, and also some body horror, like Deborah pulling her skin off, and those kind of scenes were quite effective.
Right.
But other than that, the plot, it's a no for me lah. Like they just didn't connect. I would give it like a 4. It's a very generous 4.
Right. Josh, hit us.
For me, the film really could have been so much more. And I think that's really what frustrates me the most. Right? So it is a lot of wasted potential. If you had done what it claimed that you wanted to do from the start, which is to weave a supernatural story around a framework of how Alzheimer's disease is destroying a family from within, then this could have been decent. Instead, Adam Robitel, and he then went on to do stuff like Escape Room, which I actually enjoyed, but for his debut film, he just decides to fill it with boring, repetitious jump scares, wrap around this occult serial killer mystery that I just really couldn't bring myself to care about. We have already mentioned the film. I think to me the only saving grace is Jill Larson's performance as Deborah Logan. She was really very committed to it. Everything else is very forgettable. So my recommendation, look, if you want to indulge in a supernatural found footage horror film, there are many other choices out there. Pick one of those. Avoid Deborah Logan. I'm giving this film a 3 out of 10.
Oof. Killer.
I'll give this a 5. It's pretty decent. I kind of zoned out at the end, but it was entertaining. I had fun at the beginning. It was creepy. There's like a few scenes at the end also creepy. I guess if you want to watch a good found footage, I'll recommend Paranormal Activity, my favorite film.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys are so harsh.
I would recommend watching Paranormal Activity
50%.
2, 3, or any of the other Paranormal Activities over this one.
Oh, okay, right. So I guess I'm the odd one. I sort of like this film. I mean, I'm talking about the first time I watched it. I felt that it was kind of creepy. Not kind of. It's pretty creepy for me. The whole Jill Larson's performance really did it. The whole she's this frail old lady who is just, I don't know. Sometimes old people scares me. I'm not ageist, please.
Don't they all?
But I guess it's just when we are confronted with us getting old, you sort of like fear this kind of things happening to you and whatnot. But I mean that's further down the line. But for me, the whole occultic thing, the first time I saw it, it was pretty great. I felt like, oh, okay, this is pretty creepy. I haven't seen any of this before. I mean, that was then. Then the second time round, it was much weaker. So I guess I grew as a film watcher. I don't know, but if I was watching this for the first time, I would have given it like a 7. But this time round, it's also a 5 due to the weaker elements, right? So, yep. So, guys, that was the taking of Deborah Logan. And I think we've already mentioned a few. If maybe some other film recommendations, if we're thinking of watching similar films, would be Paranormal Activity, right? And then, Josh, do you have any?
Yeah, so, you mentioned Paranormal Activity. One that maybe our listeners might have missed are a couple of Spanish films, Record and its sequel, Record 2. So you might have heard of these films before and heard that they are zombie films, so like how does this connect to the theme of possession? Yeah, they are zombie films, but there are also elements of possession, especially in the first one. Now, I'm not going to go into why that is. You really need to check it out for yourself. So the first Record, which was released in 2007, is actually one of the few horror films that have genuinely caused me to be unable to sleep at night. And I think that is largely down to just how downright creepy that film is, especially the ending. Oof, the ending really packs a punch. There was an American remake called Quarantine. You need to avoid that like the plague. Don't see that. Watch Record. Right? And also don't sleep on the second one, because the second one is actually, it's maybe not as creepy, but it's really bonkers. Like the review from Empire magazine calls it like being caught in a first-person shooter possessed by the devil. So if if that sounds like something that would be up your alley, do check them out. Record and Record 2, both Spanish films.
Right. Okay. Lynn, do you have any recommendations?
Actually, I'm not a fan of found footage, but Paranormal Activity are the good ones, I guess. Personally, for me, I like Paranormal Activity 3. I'm a fan of occult horror, so like there was something related to the grandma being in an occult and things like that. So yeah, that if you want to watch something that is occultic and is a found footage horror, this is a good one to watch.
Right. I would recommend As Above, So Below. I don't know if you guys seen it yet, but it's sort of like very occultic, and it's found footage horror. So it's about a group of people exploring the crypts of Paris, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Right.
So
The catacombs.
The catacombs, right? The catacomb crypts of Paris, which is super creepy. And yeah, I would recommend that. So that's it for us this week. We are gonna talk about next week's episode. So Caleb, what do you have for us?
Right. So next week, or next episode, next episode we'll be talking about the movie Possession that came out in 1981, a horror drama that is directed by, his name is in Polish, so I'm gonna butcher it, Andrzej Zulawski, I think.
Perfect.
And yeah, none of us watched it before, so I don't know what's it about. The synopsis is just something about this couple of husband and wife. These two couples,
Okay.
husband and wife, they're cheating on each other and then something spooky happens. I don't know.
So we don't even know whether it's a supernatural horror
Yep.
or anything to do with the occult.
We are watching
Right.
films on the theme of possession. This film is called
Mhm.
Possession. That's good enough.
Right. Right. So
Right.
if it turns out to be just a psychological thriller with no supernatural elements,
Right, I guess
That's
pretty
horror
right.
right?
Right. So Sam Neill is in this, and judging by the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, is pretty high up.
Right.
So that's why I chose it.
Okay, cool. So if you guys want to hear us talk about possession in our possession themed episodes, do join us next time for Incantation episode 3. Okay, guys, bye.
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 Bye.